Hey crew, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun scroll saw project video, we are going to be making our St. Patrick's Day scroll saw project for 2026. I've already got the pattern photocopied and attached to our material with clear packing tape. I've got the magazine the design came out of, and I'm getting ready to show it to you guys. If you are longtime followers and subscribers to the channels, you guys know that I associate St. Patrick's Day in a totally different manner as other people in the big wide world we live in will interpret it. Of course, you have the people that want to celebrate in a pub or tavern, and that's totally cool if that's what you want to do. But the way I interpret St. Patrick's Day is, of course, the beginning of spring, of longer days, of milder and warmer weather, and of course trees and nature budding back out in nature in the world we live in. But that's just how I visually interpret St. Patrick's Day. Of course, you can interpret it in any way you see fit, as I said, out in the big wide world we live in. But the design we are going to be doing, I think, ties all of that in together. Got a nice intricate design prepped and ready to go from an old issue of Creative Woodworks and Crafts magazines, November 2006, so going on 20 years old is this individual magazine, but it's got 50 plus great new patterns, so a lot is packed into this issue, and you have the pattern included for the nice little green tree frog intarsia design there. But the project we are going to be focusing on today is very early on in the magazine on page 6, and I want to go on and thank BJ Holm, and I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, for the beautiful and intricate design for this Celtic welcome sign. So there you see what we are going to be making in today's video. So a lot of intricate details, and you can see it comprises of two pieces. The main focal point here, which is of course the Celtic knots that are interwoven and linked together, so that's really cool. But then you have this second piece attached by hooks with the Celtic wording here, and it says here in the brief introduction, it says greet your friends and neighbors with this Celtic welcome sign, and the words at the bottom translate to English meaning 100,000 welcomes. So that means like wherever you are in the big wide world, whatever language you speak, it can be represented in this welcome sign as translated. But we're going to need 3 pieces of material, and I've already got all of the project right here in my hands. The main bulk of the project is going to be cut out of 1/2 inch poplar, but then we're going to be needing to cut out 2 small delicate accent pieces that goes on the bottom with these little clovers here, and I'm going to stack cut and make 2 of those as needed out of 1/4 inch material. But of course with accent pieces you could go to even thinner material down to say 1/8 inch or something like that if you wanted to. And again, the main bulk of the scroll saw work is the round design here. And what I love about this 2-piece pattern, you can see the other part here, is you could totally just cut this project out on its own if you wanted a Celtic trivet to go in your kitchen or something to set a pot or pan on. So always options and versatility with creative designs. But then of course you do have the bottom piece here with the Celtic wording on, and you can see there the dotted lines indicating where those little clovers out of the 1/4 inch material will be glued into place. Now when it comes to finishing this design, it's going to take a while to cut it out over at the scroll saw due to all of the Celtic knots. We will of course take our time and let the blade do the work. But with the Celtic design and St. Patrick's Day and Irish and Celtic and all that, you do of course need some green in it. And instead of trying to go in here and paint everything with acrylic craft paints, which you could totally do, or you could leave it natural, there's again always options and versatility. The way I'm going to be adding color in today's video is with these new acrylic dual-tipped markers that I picked up off of the Amazon website. You can see they have 2 ends here, a brush point and a fine point, and I thought with a selection of the greens here it would be a great way to get into all of those details as opposed to using a small paintbrush to go in there. Again, you could totally do that, but I've never used one of these on a scroll saw project. Some of my friends have highly recommended them for painting tedious parts, so I wanted to give them a try, and we will be using them in today's video. But since everything is pretty much prepped and prepared, let's move the camera so we can get all of the pilot holes drilled for this intricate design so we can head over to the Rikon scroll saw and start scrolling. And over here at the Craftsman drill press, we're going to take a small drill bit and drill out all of the pilot holes for internal cutting. And you'll see that I have a backer board behind the scroll saw work to prevent blowout of the pilot holes on the reverse side. And I won't show you guys drilling out all of the pilot holes since there was so many to drill out. But after they were drilled, we went over to the Rikon scroll saw and began scrolling. As always, I'm beginning with more of those central details and working my way outwards. For all of the scrolling on this project, I'll be using a number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade, and it will cut through all the materials we are cutting today exceptionally well with minimal chip out. And the primary material we are using, as I said, is 1/2 inch poplar I picked up at the hardwood store. Now the project also has those 2 small pieces that I also showed you at the beginning of the video out of 1/4 inch material. Here on the close-up view, you can see how I am just going through working on the internal cuts here, as always taking my time and letting the blade do the work. And the project does have some of those tight V points on it, and you guys know how we achieve those over at the scroll saw. We'll go in one side of the V point and back the scroll saw blade out and cut into the other side and taper it down to as fine a point as the pattern calls for. But I'll soon be switching to this view here, which is a camera angle I'm still playing around with the chest mount that is attached to my chest, but it gives you basically the actual view that I see when I'm sitting at the Rikon scroll saw. As I said, I'm just taking my time and letting the blade do the work. It took me around 2 hours to scroll everything out completely from start to finish due to all of the intricate details. But I had on some good music and I was just lost in my world of sawdust. But now we will begin releasing all the pieces from the waste wood, following those long outside perimeter cut lines. If you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel and also follow me across all the social media links under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. Cutting out the final piece here, and all of the scroll saw work will be complete. Very happy with how everything came out. But now over at the workbench, we'll carefully remove all the pieces from the waste wood, and we'll get our first visual of what the finished piece will look like. And the 2 little accent pieces out of 1/4 inch material are very fragile, so we have to be careful with those. But now it'll be time for sanding with 180 grit Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper and the vibrating palm sander, and I'll use small circular motions, being very careful not to break anything. And the 2 accent pieces I sanded by hand off camera. But after everything was sanded up nice and buttery smooth and all the sawdust was removed, it was time to apply some color, and I went with a totally new way of applying color for this project here. I picked up a couple sets of these acrylic tipped paint pens off of Amazon, and they have a brush tip and a fine tip, and let me tell you, they did a phenomenal job of adding some color to this beautiful Celtic piece we made for St. Patrick's Day. And I will not show you guys all of the painting process because I feel like that would be boring. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about it as we get ready to close the video. But the paint went on very smooth, and after it was dry, I used the pattern and the fine tip of the black marker to trace in all of the interconnected lines for the Celtic knot feature. That's the central focal point of this project. And after I was done with this, it was time to glue the small accent pieces on with medium grade CA glue and activator. And I let that dry for around 5 minutes to make sure it had completely dried and cured. And then it was time to give it a finish with a few coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss. And it really made the paint we put on it pop and stand out and give it a nice glossy appearance. But when it had dried to the touch, it was time to connect the 2 pieces with 4 small eyelets I found in my hardware bins, and I'm going to use the actual patterns we used to transfer the marks to drill these small holes with my Craftsman drill and a small drill bit. But I connected the 2 eyelets on one piece, and then I connected 2 eyelets on the other piece, and I bent them open so that they could connect, and when they were connected, the project was complete. And here we have the completed Celtic welcome sign, cut out completely from start to finish over at the Rikon scroll saw, and it finished up beautifully with some amazing and intricate details in it. I want to once again thank BJ Home for the beautiful and creative Celtic design featured in the Old Creative Woodworks and Crafts magazine. As always, I will show it to you guys as we get ready to close the video here momentarily. But this Celtic welcome sign, my friends, is the St. Patrick's Day scroll saw project for 2026. And hopefully along from the beginning of the video to now as we are closing it, you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit. It took me around 2 hours to scroll this project out completely from start to finish. There, of course, is some very tedious and intricate details in this project. So I did what I always do over at the scroll saw with my number 5 ultra reverse tooth, sharp tooth scroll saw blade, and I took my time and I let the blade do the work, and I was as loyal as I could be to the cut line. The majority of the material here is 1/2 inch poplar material. I do feel like poplar is a very underrated material to use over at the scroll saw. It scrolls so smooth, almost like pine, and it's one of my favorite materials to make projects out of. Of course, it's my favorite material to make the custom compound cut keychains out of, and I really love that greenish texture it has that comes to the forefront once you apply a finish at the end. But I'm really happy and really pleased with how this Celtic welcome sign came out. And at the bottom in the translation for this, the English translation means 100,000 welcomes. So wherever you are in the big wide world, if you see this sign swinging above a door front, know that you are welcome with open arms. But really, really cool, really creative project. I finished it up pretty much as intended in the magazine that, again, I will show you guys momentarily, and made it a sign with 2 pieces here. These are basic little eyelets that I had in my hardware bins over by the wood stove. I used 4 of them. I got out more in case one of them got damaged or I broke one trying to put it in. But again, a good morning's work out here in the workshop to make and bring this sign to life. If you wanted to add more eyelets to it, you could put 2 up here at the top as opposed to just putting a hanger on the back and put it on like a rustic beam to where it could really look like an old school tavern sign, you know, swinging in the breeze. Just a thought. I also feel like if you wanted to, keep in mind it took me 2 hours, around 2 hours to cut this project out as you see it here, and then we had to paint everything and wait for clear coat to dry, so just be aware of the time involved. But if you wanted to cut it out of thicker material, that would be a lot more slower cut over at the scroll saw, but you could of course fill it with epoxy resins and take the project to that next level. And as I said at the beginning of the video, you could of course just cut out the Celtic knot here in the central focal point, of the project, and just use it as a trivet in your kitchen when you are cooking and not cut out the bottom part. But I cut out the total project here from 1/2 inch poplar, and then you see the 2 1/4 inch accent pieces of the 2 small clovers there, which were very tedious to cut out over at the scroll saw. So of course, take your time and let the blade do the work. And when it got around to adding a splash of color, we went with something totally new over here on the channel, and it opens a whole new avenue for finishing and adding splashes of color to scroll saw and laser projects out here in the workshop. We used these acrylic dual tip markers I picked up off of Amazon. At the time of this video's recording, I got this whole pack of 24 for less than $10. That's US currency, and you can see it has a fine point and a brush point. I went around all of the stuff with the fine point and then went back with the brush point on the other end to fill everything in. I used, let's see, I think it was 4 different shades of colors here. We used a dark green, a light green, a black to do all of the interwoven Celtic details with the fine point. There's more green, the bright yellow around the words just to hopefully make them stand out and pop and be easily legible, and then the red pinstripe all the way around the bottom portion. But then when we added the Rust-Oleum clear gloss at the end, it really made everything tie together. And one thing I'm very happy with about these paint pens is they basically dry within 2 or 3 minutes after you paint it on. Of course, that may vary depending on how warm or cold your workshop is and the climate you work in, so just be aware of that. But again, I can see myself picking up more of these in the future and using them for more projects in the future. Please let me know what you think of that idea. But I'm so happy to have made this project and brought it to life visually just in time for St. Patrick's Day. Of course, a lot of people associate St. Patrick's Day with the taverns and the pubs and everything, kind of like how this sign is. It's like a classic pub and tavern sign. But as I said at the beginning of the video, I associate it with warmer weather, milder days, longer days, and everything blossoming and blooming back out in nature. But if you do partake in St. Patrick's Day, please do so responsibly, my friends. If the weather is nice in my area, we will have the annual St. Patty's Day Bash downtown, and I'll get to dress up as a pirate and put some green on the outfit and go and put smiles on faces on that day. But happy to have this project completed before March 17th, which of course is St. Patrick's Day, my friends. But I'm really, really happy with how this project finished up, and I hope in some way, shape, or form, again, you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit along the course of the video from the intro until now as we are closing it. Here is the picture of the visual, so to speak, that we had to go by, and here is the one I made in today's video. So hopefully I've done the project and pattern justice. And again, I want to once again thank BJ Home for the beautiful and creative Celtic welcome sign that translate into 100,000 welcomes. As always, crew, you are welcome over here on the Artisan Pirate YouTube channel. After I got done cutting everything out and everything was painted with the paint pens and the clear coat had dried, again, got a good morning's work in this project out here, I kept the patterns themselves once they peeled off. And this is one reason why I like to attach patterns with basic clear packaging tape, is because they basically just lift off if you are very careful. And if I wanted to make this project again, I could just lay these patterns right on some fresh material, tape it down, drill the pilot holes, and go again. But I needed the little dotted lines indicated so I would know where to drill the pilot holes with my Craftsman drill when it came to adding the eyelets. There's dotted lines on both the small portion with the words and the larger part here at the top, and you guys seen me use the drill bit there. And again, I had the little eyelets on hand. I already had them, but of course I'm sure they are sold at stores like Lowe's Home Improvement and maybe even craft stores like Hobby Lobby or Michael's if you guys want to go and pick some up and make a sign in this style and manner. But I'm so happy to have these old Creative Woodworks and Crafts magazines. For those curious, again, this is the November 2006 issue with the Intarsia tree frog on the cover. So this magazine is going on 20 years old. So if you try to source this magazine, just be sure that the full-size pattern pull-out sections are included. It was 2 with this particular magazine, and this is where we photocopied the full-size pattern for the Celtic sign out of. With these magazines being so old, if you try to find a copy of it, just make sure the patterns are included with it, because I wouldn't want you guys to pick up the magazine and then not have the patterns to make the projects. But one more look at it here as we get ready to close the video and we anticipate those nicer days with springtime and St. Patrick's Day. Again, if you guys partake in it, please do so responsibly, crew. But I had a lot of fun in today's video, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching me make this beautiful Celtic welcome sign from start to finish. That's going to be about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one. And remember, crew, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care. Happy St. Patrick's Day 2026, and I'll see you all real soon.